Hey BookTube, this is Mickey, and I'm here today to do the Black Lives Matter book tag. This book tag was created by Ruth over at Kindle Reads, whose channel I will link down below. And she created this book tag after the events of last month when Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were killed, and then there were the killings in Dallas and Baton Rouge of police officers, and there's just been a lot of tension here in the US. And she created this book tag as a way to give people a comfortable way to talk about the topic. A lot of people said that they didn't want to talk about the topic because it's not what they're used to talking about. You know, we don't usually straightforwardly talk about politics in our videos. We talk about books. Some of our books have deal with political issues, but our main focus is usually the book. And so she created this book tag to allow us to be able to talk about some of the issues that are happening in America through the thing that most of us in this community love, which is books. So the first question in the book tag says, not a moment, but a movement. Name a book that wasn't just a story for you, but something that helped define you, or it helps you see life in a different light. So the book that I'm going to talk about is actually a play, and it's called In the Blood by Susan Laurie Parks. And I saw the play first and then read it, and it is just a phenomenal play. It taught me the way in which art can incite activism. It is just an incredible play. The play is a very, very loose retelling, I don't even know if you want to call it a retelling, of the Scarlet Letter. It's definitely influenced by it. And in it, the character Hester is a homeless woman who has 5 children, and she's living under a bridge, and she's trying to figure out how she's going to take care of these 5 kids that she has. And everybody that she turns to try and get help from, they all are basically sort of passing the buck and passing it on to someone else, and they're putting a lot of the blame, and of course they're blaming her for her situation and kind of denying her help because they feel like, well, you put yourself here. And the play really focuses on the way that we dehumanize the poor in America, and the way that we take advantage of them, the way that we may not, the way that we look at their bodies and the way that we want to that we tend to deny them privileges and so on and so forth. We feel like they don't. For instance, one thing that comes up in the play is the idea that she doesn't have the right to have 5 kids if she can't take care of them. That she should be sterilized because you can't afford to take care of these kids. So why do you keep having them? This idea that we feel like because someone is poor, we have the right to limit and control them more than we would if they had money. And it's really interesting. It's just heartbreaking, super heartbreaking, just broke my heart. I was thinking about it for weeks after I saw it, and I had to read it, and I was thinking about it for weeks after I read it. It changed my mind about how I felt about welfare, about how I felt about certain social systems that we have set up. Like, it just really was eye-opening for me. And it was a piece that taught me that it was a piece that showed me that art can galvanize people to action. Because, I mean, the way the piece is told, it's very hard for you to leave that piece and think to yourself, well, I mean, you're not going to leave that piece and think to yourself, oh, that was a good play, and I'm not going to do anything about it. Like, I couldn't not do anything about the issue after reading the play. And it's the kind of art that I felt like, I saw it and I said, that's the kind of art that I want to create. And so I think it's a phenomenal play, and you definitely should check it out. The second question is, say her name. The Black Lives Matter movement was started by 3 women. Name 3 female characters and or authors that basically stood out for you and why. So for me, I'm going to start with a character. I'm going to follow like Ruth's, following the same path as Ruth, and I'm going to pick a character that was important to me in my childhood, and that character is Cassie Logan from the Logan Family series by Mildred D. Taylor. This is the first book in the series, Roll It Thunder, Hear My Cry. I loved this book. It's about a black family in Mississippi who own their land. They own their own land, and it causes a lot of tension for them in the community because they're one of the few black families who do so. And because they do so, it gives them a certain level of power that lots of people, black and white, don't have. And so it just is a really great novel. Cassie is just a fantastic heroine. She is a tomboy. She's the middle child of all brothers. She's outspoken. She believes things strongly. She loves strongly, and I just really, really loved her as a kid. So this is a book that I definitely recommend for anybody who is looking for more books by black authors. If you're if you like middle grade, and it's definitely one of my favorite female characters ever. My second female female I'm going to mention is an author, and it's actually Claudia Rackine of Citizen, who wrote Citizen. And I'm mentioning it because I want you to go read Citizen. Basically, Ruth mentioned Citizen in her video, and Dee Dee over at Brown Girl Reading did a reading from one of the pieces in Citizen and on her channel, and it really is that phenomenal of a piece. Rackine does in Citizen that I think is super important for us to talk about is what the weight of constant microaggression can have on African Americans. A lot of times people like to say things to people when black people, or anybody really, when any group, you know, talks about something that someone has done or said that is is offensive. A lot of people like to say, well, that's just, you know, it's not a big deal. You're making a big deal out of nothing. And what they don't understand is that one little thing that you just did or just said is one little thread in a tapestry of racist thought and images and jokes and feelings and stuff that have been thrown at a person. And she does a good job of showing where those aggressions happen, how they happen in your personal life, how they happen on TV, how they happen in the news, the way things are depicted in the news. Like you're constantly surrounded by it. And so when someone says that one little offbeat racist thing, it's just yet one other thing that someone has said to try and dehumanize a person. And it adds up. And she does a good job of showing how it adds up, how it affects your perceptions and of your own identity. And I just think it's a really great book to read in that regard. And the last author I'm going to mention is Katori Hall. She's a playwright, and she is just phenomenal. I've read her 2 plays, Hoodoo Love and The Mountaintop. Hoodoo Love is a really great play. It's about this woman who's in love with a musician, and she can't get him to stay home. He's a Rolling Stone, and he just wants to go and travel. He rides on the railroad tracks and plays his music, and she wants him to stay home. So she turns to the local hoodoo lady to see if she can help him, help her keep her man. And it's a really beautiful, poignant play. And then there's The Mountaintop, which is a play that imagines Martin Luther King's last day before he was assassinated, and the conversation that he might have had with a maid at the Lorraine Motel. And it is just amazing. The theater company that I'm a part of did a production of it, and it is just mind-blowingly good. Like, it's definitely a play. It reads well on the page, but it is even better in performance. So if you ever see anyone doing a performance of The Mountaintop, please go see it. You will be in for a treat. It was fantastic, and I really like it because it really looks at Dr. King where he was at the time that he died. Because I feel like when we look at King in history, we look at a lot of the high points of his career. We look at the March on Selma. We look at his I Have a Dream speech. We don't really look at where he was towards the end of his life, because he was weary, y'all. He was tired towards the end of his life. He was starting to doubt the effectiveness of his nonviolent campaign. He was starting to switch gears from talking about race issues to wanting to talk more about class issues with the Poor People's Campaign. Like, there was a lot going on with Dr. King that I feel like we don't talk about historically, and so that's one of the reasons why I really like that play. It's also just hilarious and really just moving, and you definitely should, if you can't get a chance to see it, you definitely should read it. So question number 3 is, no justice, no peace. The core value of Black Lives Matter is dignity, respect, and justice. What book best represents your core values and why? The book I'm going to pick for that is The Color Purple by Alice Walker, which I do own, but it's over the shelf over there. So, but that book was really life-changing for me for a lot of reasons. One of the things I love about that book is the way in which it looks at spirituality and the way in which it looks at the necessity of self-love. I love the way in which Suge Avery is able to allow Celie to see the God in everything, to see the God in herself, to see the God in the world, to see him outside of the confines of church and the Bible and all that kind of stuff. I thought that was just really beautiful. It's a different concept of spirituality that I've never seen before, and I found it really comforting at the time because I was on my own sort of spiritual journey. I had just left the church and I wasn't quite sure what I was doing, and it kind of really helped me on my journey. Thing that I liked about The Color Purple too is also just its messages about perseverance, about persevering through your hard times and still being able, like, going through such horrible things, the type of things that Celie goes through, and still being able to love and still being able to forgive. Like, those are things that I really believe strongly in. I believe very strongly in love and forgiveness, and I think that The Color Purple does a great job of telling that story. So it's one of my absolute favorites. I probably could have used it for question number 1 of a book that changed your life, because it really did have a huge effect on me. The next question is Deviations. The Black Lives Matter hashtag has been taken over by every cause and movement, from immigration to it being used as a generalization. She's talking about the all lives matter people here. What is the worst copycat book you have ever read? I'm gonna take a different spin on this question because I don't really know what to answer for the worst copycat book. I don't really feel like I read a lot of copycat books. I mean, I could say every book with girl in the title that's been written since Gone Girl, but I don't really read those, so I don't feel like I can really give like my comments on that. But what I will talk about instead is a book in which you can see the influences, you can see what book influenced that author while they were writing the book very clearly. And the book that I am talking about is Ta-Nehisi Coates' Between the World and Me. And I see lots of similarities, and I could tell very much that Ta-Nehisi Coates was influenced by James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, the second essay in that collection. There are just I read Between the World and Me first, and then I read The Fire Next Time later. And while I was reading The Fire Next Time, I kept thinking, Coates was talking about that in his book. I was like, oh, he talked about that in there. And it was like, I could tell very clearly that if Coates most definitely read this book, and he definitely had it in the back of his mind when he was writing his book, because there are just way too many similarities for it not to be so. They do a good job of looking at what it's like to inhabit a black body in a world where that body is criminalized and dehumanized. They do a good job of where you fear for your body. They do a good job of depicting that. They do a good job of depicting the different ways in which black people react to being mistreated, how some of us react with anger and arrogance, and how some of us react with love and patience, and the difference in how neither way is right or wrong, or at least that neither way, there's an understanding of each way. And they just basically look at how hard it is to be a black man in America because all you really want to be is human. And how do you capture that humanity and keep it? And it's just done beautifully. I definitely would recommend both books, because while Coates, like, again, while I feel like Coates was heavily influenced by Baldwin, he still has points that are very relevant to the time period in which he lived, which is most definitely different from the time period in which Baldwin lived. So definitely would recommend both. And then the last question is, The Walk Worth Taking. What is a book that you struggled through, but by the end of it found it worthwhile? And the book that I am going to talk about is Native Son by Richard Wright, which I have right here. And yeah, I struggled with this book. And when I say I struggled through this book, it's not so much that I was like bored by it, or like I found it slow going, because I didn't. I actually was surprised at how fast it read. But it really, there's a tension in the book, because you know from the very beginning that nothing good can happen from this story. Our protagonist, Bigger Thomas, is a young man who is motivated by fear and rage. That's literally his motivations. He's devoid of hope. So he's motivated by fear and rage, and he has no actual real hope for life. And so it just influences a lot of his actions, and your stomach is tied in knots as you see the things that he goes through with some of the other characters that he interacts with, they go through, because you just know that there's no good that can come out of this. And when Richard Wright wrote this book, Richard Wright believed really strongly that books, especially books by Black authors, should make people uncomfortable, especially white people. He believed really strongly. He felt that if a white person can read your book and come out of it feeling catharsis and feeling good about themselves, then you haven't fulfilled your duty as a artist of color, which is part of the reason why he wasn't a huge fan of Zora Neale Hurston, or why he wasn't a big fan of Their Eyes Were Watching God. He wanted people to feel uncomfortable. He wanted you to come out of this, and he wanted people to feel uncomfortable, and he did a really good job of that. It's hard to feel sympathy for Bigger. It's hard. I found the sympathy because I know Bigger Thomases. I know people like this who just feel like they don't have anything to live for. They don't have anything to work for. So they're just angry all the time, and they're just trying to find a way to subvert the system. Some other, how can I fight? They know they can't fight the system, so they try and find a way to work within it in very negative ways. And I know these people, so I was able to find sympathy for it. But it's hard. I won't even lie. It's hard. He does some despicable things. He's not a good person. I don't know how to say it that way. He does lots of things that you make him hard to get behind. And I think that that's sort of the point of the book. The idea that he wanted to send out was that this is what racism creates. This boy is what racism creates. When you take a person and you deny them their humanity, you deny them the chance to better themselves, what do you expect to get? And how that can spill over. And how that's not going to stay contained to Black communities. It's going to spill over into your communities, into your white, into the white communities. You cannot segregate yourself off from them the way that you think you can. It is a fascinating novel. The last 100 pages are super hard to get through because they are a bit didactic. Like I said, Richard Wright has a message. He has a message, and he wants to make sure you get it. So he's basically like, if you didn't get it in the first 400 pages, let me spell it out for you, point by point by point. And that was really hard to get through. That was slow going reading. And I was like, oh man, I am never going to finish this. But I got through it, and I got to the end, which I think is a phenomenal ending. And yeah, it was totally worth it. And I definitely recommend that you guys pick up Native Son. This is a book that I know I'm going to go back to at some point in time. So yep, these are my books for the Black Lives Matter hashtag. I encourage everyone who wants to do the hashtag to do it. Please don't let any ignorant people keep you from doing so, because again, I won't lie, I am always nervous about posting anything with the Black Lives Matter hashtag on it, because I know that it attracts trolls, and I'm super scared of them, to be quite honest. So but don't let that stop you from doing it. I hope that you pick up these books. If you're reading these books, let me know down below. If you don't want to necessarily do the tag, or maybe you have some recommendations and you want to put them down in the comments below, please do that, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye.